Alrighty. As I told our team, very rarely in this league, especially with our mindset towards playing complementary football in all three phases, to win the turnover battle 2-0 and not have a little bit better chance to win it in the end. We got it to one score there. Just couldn't get that last stop. Tried calling some timeouts and see if maybe we can get one more drive for Jaron. Would have loved to see him in that kind of end of game 2-minute drive, but just didn't come together. Would have, too much, really some sloppy things that we totally were in our control in the first half offensively. Had some opportunities to maybe finish those drives with touchdowns, and we just did not do it. And then when we weren't able to get drives going, most of the time penalties, struck again. And I know a lot of these guys aren't getting a ton of reps that are playing in these football games, but still would like to believe that we can play clean football and just simply execute the play called without penalties or mental errors, and we've got to continue to work through that with the group that was out there tonight. I know we sat a few more guys this week than we did last week, mainly just because of the reps we had Wednesday, Thursday with our first groups and the substitutions amongst those first groups, and very much looking forward to this week with the Arizona Cardinals coming to town. It's going to be hot. We're planning on just a little bit more work during the practices, rep-wise, as part of our build towards the season. So it's going to be a big-time challenge for our guys. Just a couple injury updates for you. Najee Thompson, started to develop some symptoms there, concussion symptoms, after making that real strong play there on special teams. So he'll be somebody to monitor. We'll more than likely he's in the protocol here for the short term, and we'll allow him to go through that process. Theo Jackson, AC, with his shoulder, was able to return, which is great to see. And then Tay had a little bit of a shoulder as well. N'Keal Harry was the only player that we planned on having that had a little bit of a soft tissue kind of aggravation in warm-ups, and we wanted to be smart with him, instead of trying to make him push through it. But that was unfortunate. Wanted to see him tonight.
How would you really evaluate each of your quarterbacks tonight?
I thought Nick, really for the most part, did a lot of the same things moving the team he did at Seattle. I thought there was I think back to that first drive, there's a couple chances there. If we're just a hair more accurate, we probably get the third down conversion, and then we're in plus territory, rolling hopefully down into the red zone and trying to score a touchdown. But he runs the team incredibly efficient. His communication, his ownership of our offense. He is a accurate quarterback. That's one of the reasons why he's here. So I don't worry for a second about Nick. But there was just a couple high misses here and there that, whether it was technique or he was dealing with some push and some rush at times. And then we didn't do much to run the football early on in the game to help him all that much. But yet, just like he did last week, he was able to move the team and at least generate some points there. Jaron, really how it kind of came down rep-wise, I wouldn't have minded getting him in a little bit earlier, but wanted to let that group continue to try to sustain there towards the end of the second quarter. He came in and was good to see him, engineer that touchdown drive, used his legs to steal a third down conversion, and then we were able to punch it in. Some decent run game there late with that third, fourth group kind of mixing in there, some new guys. So, but I thought overall the quarterbacks, for where we're at right now, I think we can continue to do things to help those guys, but we're also putting them in some situations to see how they respond and handle it. And I thought for the most part both guys did some good things tonight.
Kevin, how would you size up the punt return competition and also that 4, 5, 6 receiver competition?
Yeah, it's been particularly that receiver room without Jalen Naylor getting very many reps since day one. It's really allowed more guys to compete in that first huddle outside of JJ, KJ, and really Jordan. Then you start to look at Jalen Reagor. Brandon Powell's had an excellent training camp, doing so many things that I don't think people realize sometimes, just all the different jobs he can do. Jalen Reagor's speed, we tried to get him over the top a couple times tonight, kind of either pocket didn't allow it or the coverage didn't, but his speed is a real factor. When I think about just the depth of getting Tristan back from that kind of near scare we had, and getting him back and getting all these snaps for him. I think that group is going to be very tough for us to figure out whether it's 5 or 6 or ultimately what the depth looks like on the practice squad, because there's probably 4 or 5 names that are all deserving. And these are good problems to have, but trying to figure out how it will all fit. Knowing we should get Jordan back this week will be huge for us. And KJ and Justin have been getting their work throughout. But I would love to get Jalen Naylor some work here at some point if we can. But he's a player that I think very highly of, and just want to continue to see how that whole group, especially on the back end, fits with how we want to play with multiple personnel groupings and trying to commit to building our run game up.
Kevin, they had obviously a number of big runs there, especially a couple in the second half. Yeah. Were those run fit issues or tackling or a combination of things?
I would say, just in some of the discussion on the sideline with Flo, I think it was probably a little bit of both. I know a couple of the longer runs. I think we missed a tackle on one, kind of had a chance to get him in the hole there for a 4 or 5 yard gain, and that long one in the first half was more of that. But listen, I think if we were playing our normal calls and there's some of these looks, these runs aren't getting off, maybe we're talking them out of some of these things, but we're trying to give these guys enough of an opportunity, enough of a plan to compete, but also our mindset is on September 10th. So, and much beyond, a short week right after that, and then on into what's out in front of us. So we're asking our guys to play differently than they do every single day, and I think that's okay in the evaluation process, really on offense and defense, for that matter.
You talked about that a little bit last week with Andrew Booth too, I think playing in straight man coverage. Is that kind of by design on a lot of levels? I know you don't want to show much of the game plan, but does that simplifying things allow you to kind of evaluate in a controlled environment a little more? Yeah,
we have to be able to see guys in certain aspects that they're going to need to show what they're capable of doing at this point, whether it's a rookie, a second-year player, a veteran player. We need to know what we have, so when we actually start game planning for opponents, we can build the best plans for our players, because that's ultimately what my number one goal is when I meet with the staff each and every week of the season, is how do we do our part to make sure we give these guys a good chance to have success by schematically what we're asking them to do, and then are we teaching them the techniques and fundamentals to go do that. So I think it's a great point, but I still would like to see our team able to come out in these preseason games and compete to get victories as well, no matter who's in the game. It really that doesn't matter. We're always trying to come out and win football games.
Did you give play calling to someone else in the second half?
Yeah, Wes is called. He's. I called some of the early, first half stuff, and then trying to get him some reps and thinking about trying to get creative with the game next weekend. It was something that, whether it was Sean or Jay Gruden, some of my early times getting reps calling plays was during the preseason, and I just think it's a really good thing for me to sit back and kind of evaluate our whole team sometimes, especially as some of the guys down the line on the roster. I want to have a great feel for them. I want to be able to watch things closely in all 3 phases, and that helps me do that. I thought Wes, on that touchdown drive, called a great drive, and the guys executed, and there was really no, delay games or pre-snap penalties or anything. So the function, that was really calling it from the box down, and we're always looking at things from a standpoint of helping people, not just players, but players and coaches develop.
What would the creative thing be next week?
I don't know. Wes has, got a chance to call a few. I'll probably let him call a few next week, and maybe some of our other coaches as well. And Flo's kind of done some similar things on the defensive side, especially in the second halves as well.
Do you have any interest in getting any starters anytime, like next week?
Yeah, I'm thinking about, from the standpoint of when I count the reps for the ones from this past Wednesday and Thursday, and then knowing what it's going to be like Wednesday and Thursday with the Heat, and my plan is to keep the rep count the same as planned, which is more than last week. Those guys are going to get plenty of work. As the standard rule goes, I think you saw it with one of their players tonight. that might not have played had he not been kicked out of practice. So that's a standing rule we have. So I don't know if Coach Vrabes has had that rule throughout, or he just in our dialogue decided to apply that one. But I think the point of it all is we've spent a lot of time planning training camp, these joint practices, and I know these games are genuine opportunities for game situations to come up. But as you guys that were at the joint practices, we hit just about every situation possible in 2 days, and had ultra competitiveness out there, almost right to that line. Give those guys a lot of credit over there for being able to have 2 days of work without it getting out of hand.
Kevin, how would you assess Lewis tonight? He had that missed tackle, but also a sack. Seems like he's playing faster.
That's what jumps out to me, and the missed tackling or the missed tackle on that one run. He's coming downhill. He's trying to fill his responsibility, and those are going to happen, now, especially when he's really just getting back going again. And that's the one thing we can't simulate in those joint practices is tackling. So to see him make the play on Malik, on the red zone scramble, that's a tough guy to bring down. There was a couple other times where he just pulled the trigger and came downhill and made a play. I think Lou's in a great spot. It was fun to make him a captain tonight. The team, when I announced that, was really excited about that. So Lou's doing a great job right now, just building upon what he does each and every day. I'm sure there'll be some things to correct, but he'll be right back in there with Durante and Harry, Cam, and Metellus. I mean, what a group that you can really look at right now. And then Theo and Jay Ward. I mean, that's a full room of NFL football players, and we feel very strongly about that room.
Kevin, you mentioned the running backs a little bit, the runs in the second half. How did you feel like Debo acclimated in this second game, and then what intrigued you guys about Dykes in the first place?
Yeah, I think he had a great workout. He was kind of a little bit of an unknown guy for me, but then watching him work out and seeing the movement, seeing kind of just going through drills with some other backs and things, he kind of jumped out to us. And when we got the opportunity to bring him in, we wanted to give him enough time to get acclimated and give himself a chance to play tonight. I thought Debo, for the most part, I just feel when he has the football in his hands, he's finishing physical downhill. Now, it's not always, the reads aren't always perfect, and the aiming points and all those things. That's what our job is as coaches, to continue to give him clarity and then demand the execution that we're looking for. But just like we've talked about with Ty at times, just the physicality at which he runs with, I feel that with Dwayne and to see Dykes come in and hit some backdoor cuts on a duo and got it all the way back, really almost behind the backside tackle on his own play, like things that sometimes guys that haven't been in the system a whole lot don't do. So I thought that was exciting, getting downhill and really moving the team for the first time all night, really via the run. It was good to see those guys get in there, and we're going to allow those guys to play an absolute ton next week, compete to try to win a game.
Kevin, Jared was talking about how one thing he needs to work on is actually before the game, that he wasn't using the preparation properly. Being a former quarterback, he was just saying, did you talk to him about it, or was it something he came on his own? He said, you got to know the plays, and I wasn't using the pregame properly before the last preseason game. He wants to change that.
Well, I think it's a matter of, do you know it or do you really know it? To the point where when myself or Wes starts calling a play for him, you should know that game plan well enough that you can kind of finish the calls, and then you can be the guy in the huddle that's so clear and concise with what we're asking, what that call is, that motions and timing of motions and all the little details. And that's really our whole group right now. It's not just Jaron and that, it's that whole group in there. And really the group that started the game as well. There's guys that we're looking for that detail as much as possible, because we want guys to demonstrate what it would look like if they were in that first huddle, regardless of the position. But there's a little bit more volume. There's a lot of plays that we may have ran over Wednesday and Thursday that weren't going to be on the call sheet tonight. So it's that give and take of, a guy trying to prepare for a game he's going to play in versus a practice where he's only going to get 4, 5, 6 reps, and then a lot of those plays will not carry over. It's a hard part of being a rookie in this league, especially the way we do things, but he's going to get a ton of time next week. He continues to find little ways here and there to move the team. Just looking for more consistency, not only from Jaron, but from our whole, our whole unit, whatever phase is on the field. We're getting closer, but we want to see that last phase of training camp kind of put a stamp on our group, and I can promise that our first groups have been getting their work and really a major part of the young guy development as well. I mean, I think about Jordan Addison coming back this week. He'll be right next to JJ. I think about Jay Ward sitting next to Harrison Smith in meetings. Ivan sitting next to Jordan Hicks in meetings. Like the way we're coaching these guys up, my hope is they can play their best football next week and really put a stamp on what they've done this training camp to try to make our team.
Just on the defensive line, seems like a lot of guys jockeying for position. I guess how do you use what you saw tonight, where it seemed like a lot of guys got opportunities to evaluate that spot?
Yeah, I mean, with really sitting HP and Bullard and Dean and really seeing kind of there wasn't a whole lot of guys available, but everybody that was up got a ton of reps. So you worry sometimes about the fatigue. When it's, the guys that don't get all the reps in practice, you're asking them to be on the field for 9, 10, 11 play drives. But I thought our guys handled it well. I thought the substitutions defensively were really clean throughout the night. And all those guys particularly flashed, different times. I can think back of Sheldon Day, making an impact early on and, on that, kind of when we forced the negative run, when Malik went backwards there a little bit. Says he popped a couple times on the backside of some run plays. Blacklock's always going to be so active in different phases. It's, that group right now is going to be tough to try to figure out what the numbers look like behind some of those guys I mentioned. And then ultimately, what does it look like, depending on the personnel grouping, where we need a 3 and a 5 technique. We need a bigger body nose behind Tonga. Making sure it all works while we can still potentially keep the numbers we may have to at some other positions. It's not going to be easy.